Hello. Well, it's a cold November daytime here in UK in Wrexham, North Wales. I'm Rich Hebblewhite. I'm your friendly local global director of programs and events here at Global Game Jam, and we're here with another exciting webinar. And this week we are talking more about Global Game Jam Next, the exciting new initiative that we've just launched this year, again in partnership with Games for Change. It's super exciting to be involved in this, particularly from the point of view that we're working with the future generation of developers focusing on age groups 10 to 18. And if you caught last week's webinar, you'll know that we spent quite a bit of time talking you guys through the application process, all of the ins and outs of that. And we even looked at the application form, and we looked at some of the fields, some of the kinds of information that you need to tell us and things that we need to be able to speak to you about as part of that application process. And no doubt there'll be elements of that we cover again this week. But this week, what I wanted to do is speak to real life SOs, site organizers with real Global Game Jam Next experience. And that's super important to hear more about their journeys. And hopefully that will give you guys some insight into the kind of things that you can expect when you join a GGJ Next site. It might give you some ideas in terms of how you may or may not approach the way that you organize your site. And I'm sure you'll hear about lots of similarities in terms of your communities and the kind of setups that you have in your own home community. So without further ado, let's bring in this week's guests and we'll get cracking. Through the magic of science, we're all here.
Hi.
Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hi, guys. Yeah, so I'll pick you out one at a time just to introduce yourself. So don't forget to tell us where you are in the world, because we are everywhere. This week we've got lots and lots of diverse locations. Meena, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Okay, hi everyone. I'm Minha. I'm from Sri Lanka. I'm an educator and a consultant in game development. I'm a member in Global Game Jam Next 2025 Advisory Committee, and I have organized Global Game Jam Next sites in Sri Lanka, in person and online for past 5 years.
Well, that's amazing that you've been doing it for 5 years. I think maybe you have probably more GGJ Next experience than all of us here today, which is awesome. I think I've done it three times. So you're winning by far. It's amazing. And we'll come back to you in a second. Kunan.
Hello, everyone. Kunan from Shenzhen, China. I've been a game educator for over 8 years, and also I'm a developer. So really thrilled to be able to share my insights about GGJ Next. And I think it's a fabulous opportunity for anyone interested in getting to know about game as a student, but also for teacher faculty, because it's really good for your background in reinforcement for college admission. So I definitely recommend it.
Yeah, thanks. I think that's actually a really good point, because I'm an absolute preacher of the benefits of jams on your personal development. And one of the reasons we're here today talking about GGJ Next is because of that impact on the personal development of younger people coming through, because jams are not only the domain of adults and universities and college kids and all these kinds of things. Actually, there's a space for everyone, and that's the power of GGJ Next. Is like a really good point. Yadu.
Hi. My name is Yadu. I'm the Chief Creative Officer at Second Quest. We are a small studio based out of Bangalore in India. And I've been running community initiatives in India since 2009, running the first Global Game Jam site in Bangalore, and then growing it to what it is now, with the help of the amazing community of devs here. Unlike Mina, who has run the most amount of GGJ Next sites, I have zero experience running Global Game Jam Next sites, but have a lot of experience running GGJ and more jams here. So I'm like the rest of you watching this stream. I'm also here to learn a lot more from the rest of the folks here, and also hopefully get a jam site going this year as well.
Yeah. I do. For folks watching, has got a massive amount of Global Game Jam experience, and you've been a member of our community for a very long time, and you occupy a couple of very important positions as well, as actually do all three of you. You're super important to what we do with the Global Game Jam Next steering committee, for example, and various other initiatives. Yeah, so don't undersell yourself, Yadu. You're a key component of what we're doing.
I think, I think we need our introductions to be far better at this point.
Yeah. We'll produce a script for next time. Don't worry. Oh, Nicky's joined us. Yay.
Hello.
Nicky, do you want to? It was perfect timing, absolutely perfect timing, because we were literally just introducing ourselves and stuff. Do you want to tell us where you're at and a little bit about your site and your background?
Hi, sorry, I'm doing this off my phone just because I was running late. My name's Nicky. I'm currently based in Johannesburg, South Africa. I'm VP of HR and operations at a company called 24-Bit Games. We're Africa's largest video game company. And what I'm trying to do is just strengthen the sort of games industry community here. I'm trying to launch initiatives to particularly focus on getting more girls into games or just creating a bit more diversity. I'm trying to run particularly game jams at girls' schools, at all girls' schools, and giving them huge prizes, hopefully to stimulate them to join the industry. And yeah, that's basically what I'm trying to do. And I'm sorry for being late.
You don't need to apologize. You couldn't have timed it any more perfectly. It was absolute perfection. So don't worry. Okay, so we've got a really good panel of folks with lots of experience at various different angles, particularly GGJ Next and working with younger people and young developers aspiring for the future, but also that blend of experience working with traditional game jam sites with adults and things like that. And that's actually really helpful if you have that experience, because it helps you to plan out your site. It helps you to set realistic goals and expectations for yourself, which I think is also quite important, because you can get sometimes a little bit carried away and maybe try to push too far too fast. So I think from a global game jam point of view, it makes sense, right, to listen to the experience of guys who have done it many, many times before. You can learn so much in terms of how best to get yourself started off if you've never done it before. So the first big question I suppose we have to tackle for the day is, why GGJ Next? Why do you feel that GGJ Next is such a valuable initiative? What is it that makes you want to be involved? Why have you been involved? And tell us a little bit about some of the experiences that you've gained along the way in each of your respective sites. Nicky, I'll start with you.
Cool. So for me, I think I really like GGJ Next because it's been one of the programs that is super accessible and makes it really, really easy for me to share resources with a lot of the students, where it's very foreign for them. We don't have, anything like this in our sort of curriculums. So it helps me upskill the teachers. It helps, me also help the kids learn something like Unreal and Unity, which is a little bit more industry relevant. And I like that it's also a global thing, that they know what they're learning here. It's everybody in the world who's doing GGJ is doing the same sort of thing. So I like there's that standard that I can sort of strive towards, make sure that we've got it there. And yeah, I think that's been my experience. And also just the knowledge that people are able to share is really, really helpful.
What would you say is the reaction to your initiatives with GGJ Next in your respective part of the world? Would you say it's overwhelmingly positive? Would you say sometimes people don't quite understand maybe what game jams are, and what kind of things do you do to kind of overcome those kind of challenges?
Are you still directing it at me?
Yeah, Nicky, that's up to you.
Yeah, so as well from my side, we've had a really, really good response, because at the moment there is a bit of an IT problem in South Africa where the curriculum is just very far behind. A lot of the IT teachers feel like, I don't know if you know Delphi, but a lot of the schools are still writing on Delphi. So they're needing a lot of more support on this. And whilst they don't know what game jams are, it's once I explain to them, then they're super optimistic and excited. And actually next year, January, I've been invited to come to what is the Independent Education Board's conference with all the schools, to actually present it in front of all of the schools to hopefully get more buy-in from way more schools. So they're really, really open to this. They like the fact that it's something practical that they can learn, it's practical experience and that sort of thing, which our curriculum just at the moment isn't covering. So it's really useful because the jams happen at weekends or something like that. We try to make sure we organize it when there's no school, and then a lot of participation is able to happen that way.
And that's actually a really interesting perspective, in that you're using GGJ Next as a way of kind of filling the perceived gaps in where you see the curriculum is. And that's a different take, which I really like. It's really interesting. Kunan, how about you?
Yeah. Thank you, Rich. So, I mean, from my experience of running site in China, I found, because our culture tend to be more conservative, so having a jam like specifically for the junior and senior people, so make them feel, okay, I'm safe, because they don't need to compete with a higher student. So when I demonstrate that some of the winner outcome game they made to the potential student I have with, they just feel, how is that possible? How is that so easy to win? And it's an international stage, so to them it's definitely the channel to direct their motivation and interest as well, because they're still developing their interest to video game. They are not so sure about if this is what I'm gonna do in the future, but having this jam GGJ Next providing a perfect opportunity to verify the hobby, the passion. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess as a result of the completion of their jam, they walk away with something that they've made, and they can maybe use that to help them apply for an application somewhere else, or to progress further. Use it as a stepping stone for their personal development, right? I think that's quite a good vantage point for you guys. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Mina, what about you?
Yeah, I really like to organize the Game Jam Next, especially for kids. I love to teach kids about game development, game design, and give them opportunity to like show their creativity, innovation, and also their skills to the world. So Global Game Jam Next gives us that opportunity. As organizers, we get that opportunities, and also the children will get the same opportunities to show their skills to the world. So yeah, that's why I like it. And in especially in Global Game Jam Next, we have training sessions. In the last Global Game Jam Next, we had 4 months training. So that was opportunities for every kids. Some especially for like differently able children, they get in Sri Lanka, they don't get an opportunity. Like high intelligent kid and also the differently able children will not get opportunity in Sri Lanka. So we did the first time we are doing like with Global Game Jam. So that's why I really like it.
That's amazing. Did you said 4 months of training, right? That you said.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that's amazing. How often was the training? So you basically, so just for folks that are watching, so they can understand kind of what your structure is. So you offer 4 months of prep training before they jam, right? That's correct.
Yes, like per month we have 3 sessions like that.
Right.
Yeah, we continue that for 4 months.
Yeah. Okay. What kinds of things would you do then in your training? What kind of training sessions? What does a training session look like? What would be an example of one?
Yes, so last time we did it like this. So I booked a venue, and also like I booked some classes in public library and other spaces, and kids like they will come in person with their parents, and we have a safe environment, like everyone can see what's happening inside. So safety is also important. So I just organize, especially when we are organizing for kids, parents will consider, they will ask, is it a good place, is it safe, like that. So and we do game design training every month, game development, like for kids who doesn't know anything, like beginners or age group 10 to 18 years. Like if they don't know even anything, they can come and learn. And we can we have volunteers, and I'll be the main, like I'm the teacher and the educator. We had in person and also online session. And
Right. So you
also
run the combination of digital and online. Okay, that's really good. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And by the way, it's also really great that you're opening the doors and for people that have absolutely no experience whatsoever. And I'm picking up on that because we had a good question about that in prior to this webinar that somebody posted asking almost exactly that, in terms of what kind of experience do you need to host a jam site or anything like this, and that goes some way to answering it. But I think we'll circle back and talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes' time. Yadu, do you want to talk a little bit about just your experiences of jams in general, because I think that's also quite worthwhile for a nice comparison.
Sure. I think I was basically frantically taking notes about all the feedback, all the points that everybody mentioned, so that I can actually come back to them also. But I just want to quickly add that the real selfish reason for me to host a GGJ Next site is to basically figure out if I can make a game with my child also, who fits into the age bracket of 11 to 18.
Perfect.
So that's an excuse to get someone else also into the game space. But aside from that, I think the industry also has. So two things. I think the question that you asked about how has jams essentially helped and what has that experience been. I think since we've been doing some sort of jams for a long time, like since 2008-9 onwards in some sense, and the Global Game Jam also being a global jam and kind of being able to pull people together. I think that has helped build like a cohesive community of folks who are able to share and also sort of share their interests and also find each other in some sense. I think back in 2010 or 11 or 12, the biggest question was, are people even making games here? And now it's like, okay, it's like, so now there is enough and more people making games, and people are talking and people are jamming, and now it has become a space for experimentation as well. So I think that has been like the jams, and especially the Global Game Jam has sort of brought a large community of people across India kind of together. The other thing is that there has always been this problem about skill gaps from the industry and where education is, especially for games and games education. And I think there's always been we've always been trying to figure out how to kind of figure out that an on-ramp for folks from let's say higher education to college to the industry, what that path is going to be like. And of course, there's been some stigma around games. I think we've all faced that at some point in some levels. So I think these three things potentially, that having a GGJ Next site hopefully will be a space to clear out all these questions for concerned parents and kind of show the possibilities that the space affords and games as a medium affords. And that it needn't be games, right? Like it needn't be for entertainment. It has such a wide application, and there's like a potential to kind of do many things. And at least this will hopefully plant a seed that will kind of go towards that. So hopefully, I'm not ranting on at this point.
No, everything you're saying, what you're saying resonates perfectly with me. And for example, I'm a long time site organizer for GGJ Next, and having kind of performed in multiple roles as a site organizer, and then a regional organizer, and then a global regional coordinator, and now a full-on director role here at the Global Game Jam, that you see lots of benefits and challenges and constraints. And the interesting thing is, from a personal point of view, I mean, I founded the games industry, the indie games industry sector, if you like, for North Wales. In Wales, there's always been a game sector, and there's always been sporadic things. But it was really when we launched the games degrees at my previous university, at Wrexham University, it kind of created this ecosystem. But you mentioned about the stigma of games, and I think that's why jams and things are super important, because they help bridge that gap. And the gap and the trepidation comes from uncertainty quite often. People are, become a little bit fearful or doubtful about things they don't quite understand. And there'll be people in positions of influence with finance and resources who maybe don't quite understand what the potential for the games industry and the potential it has to impact upon the technology industries in your country as well, in a global sense in everyone's countries. And bridging that gap is super important. So the sooner you can speak to people, get them involved, and show those benefits, it's vitally important. And I would also agree with you completely in terms of schools, right, where you have the gaps in the curriculum with respect to things like creative design, like in the UK, for example. Although kids learn to be creative and they do design things, they don't necessarily do games design at school level or even at high school level beyond.
Or design thinking also in that aspect. Any sort of design thinking and problem solving.
Yeah. Exactly that. So, the ability to have GGJ Next, which allows you to work with schools and expose them to all these amazing things. And not just the pupils, but the teachers, because they immediately then see and understand the value of these things. And when you have that sort of community spirit that's there, and now they have a goal and they enjoy it and they want to aspire and do more, that's when you have that growth and you create that critical mass. So it's super important. So with respect to that then, I thought it would be interesting to talk a little bit about the kinds of projects that you see at your own respective sites. I'll start with Mina, because I think Nicky's with us, but I'm not sure. Can you hear us, Nicky? Just checking in. Oh, I'm not sure if she can hear us. So I'm going to jump to you, Mina. Do you want to give us some examples of some of the kinds of projects that attendees at your GGJ Next site typically kind of work on? You've been doing it for a few years, right? So you must have seen lots and lots of crazy examples.
Yes, like we did some workshop, lot of workshops, especially in game development, and like I asked many students to come and join, and like in Sri Lanka, parents, they don't have an understanding about game development, so they think it is a time wasting thing. Games are only for entertainment, so we have to educate the parents first. For that, I did a special workshop online and in person. So that was one project, and I worked with some schools and public library, and also my own class students, everyone.
What kind of games do they tend to make? Do they do digital games, non-digital games? Do you give them tutorials that they work through and it produces a specific sort of output, or do you find that they're a bit more creative than that and they're more autonomous, or is it a balance, would you say?
Yes, first I told about the themes, because children, they didn't understand what is the meaning for the themes. So outgrow hunger, what is that? And in last time we had peace, I think peace performers or something like that, and about the nature. So I explained everything. Then only that they got to know what is the meaning of that. Then next time, we did some projects like how to make games, and I showed them examples and I made a game. Then I gave them the opportunity to come to a place like in public library and another place. So they came with their parents, and I gave them laptops, and because they didn't like laptops, so they want tablets. So we had few tablets, but we shared that. And yeah, so I thought about game design, what are how to make characters, those things. So we had a projector, and I taught them, and they started drawing using papers. Then, and some kids, they don't know how to do digital drawing. That was a little bit challenging for them. So I told them to draw in the papers. So we took photos and we submitted in the Global Game Jam site.
No, it's really good. And in my experience, I've found that the younger the audience that you have, it works a little bit better when things are slightly more prescribed, because you've got they don't necessarily have the skills, for starters, to jump into all types of complex technology, and sometimes they don't have the resources either. So it's not necessarily the norm for people to have a laboratory with PCs that are capable of running the latest game engine tech and things like that. And those types of tech there is an entry-level barrier that is reasonably complex, right? You can't just jump into the average game engine and just start making amazing games in 1 minute. It takes time. And so I actually really like, Mina, that you run these skill workshops for a period of time before you start. And we have a certain amount of aspiration with the same idea at Global Game Jam for the traditional jam that we run, in that we now have a prep week, and the whole idea of the prep week is to plan out your training and offer these kinds of support workshops. But it's awesome that you do it for such a long period of time prior to that. Kunan, what's your take? What kind of projects do you guys typically work on at your jam site?
Oh, this year is particularly different because we do the private training for game development, so it always feel like a bit missionary. Okay, kids want to make a game to the college application. It always like that, but like this year, really different because we partner up with a Shenzhen local international school, and their tutor was specifically keen on game, but he doesn't know programming side. So we get to invite it to their school. We are delivering 2 courses about the coding, but then the school teacher invite the junior student to do the story, and then the senior student to do the Unity, Unreal type of development. So it's kind of we aiming to submit to the Global Game Jam Next, and so I never thought it can be like this. Like every party collaborate. Like you have a professional expert from outside, and then you have school tutor who really keen on game, and using this GGJ Next opportunity to get the stage to the kids, and kids, not just one grade of kids, but like the senior and the junior people collaborate together. Because junior people, they tend to have a lot of imagination because they don't. I mean, I hate to say this, but they forward to imagination. Like the thing they draw or the story they write, it just who would come up that kind of crazy idea? Kids will, and use that idea to make game development. Usually, I mean, it's kind of hard, but it can blast. Yeah.
No, I agree. I think when you get a little bit older, it's easy to become constrained by your preferences and your experience and your training and things like that. Whereas when you're younger, things are just more organic and more instinctive, and it works really well. Yeah. Just last week, I spent a few days doing mini game jams, global game jam, GGJ Next game jam sites with around 350 children at 3 different schools in my region in North Wales, and I was working with children that were aged, I think it would have been 11, 12, and 14 were the 3 age ranges. And the amount of creativity was amazing, and the way they approached it was amazing. And by the way, the jams that I ran were all specifically focusing on non-digital prototyping. So we were making tabletop games, board games, this kind of thing. And I challenged all of the groups, including the youngest guys, to see if they could come up with ideas that don't involve using a dice. Because quite often when you ask somebody to make a board game, they tend to, well, where's the dice? And they tend to recreate existing board games and maybe change something small about it to crowbar a theme in. But that wasn't the case. And all of the kids were superbly creative, and there was an amazing amount of mess and papers and all sorts of things everywhere. But the final finished products were all just outstanding, full of color, full of life, full of fun ideas. Some of which were very physical, where you had to transport food from one place to another in the same room and things like that. And they were all very, very interesting, very fun games, and probably not what you'd get if I did that same exercise with a room full of adults. A totally different type of experience. And I think, by the way, that's also one of the great valuable things about GGJ Next, in that the experience, it's very, very different working with young developers. It's so much, there's a melting pot of fun and creative chaos and enthusiasm. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. I wouldn't have it any other way. It's brilliant.
I think as adults, you have a lot of constraints, and then you constrain yourself with the things that you already know, I guess, and which again kind of forces you to look through your narrow lenses. But as children, you don't really have any logic as such at times.
Yeah. No, it's true. And at my site, in previous years, for example, we've run GGJ Next in different ways. We've done it with board games, we've done it with digital games, and as I mentioned slightly earlier, some of the digital games. When you're trying to teach a piece of software, first you've got to get over the barrier of knowing what things do what when you're using that software. So you lose a reasonable amount of time getting over that hurdle, and the hurdle will be higher or lower depending on who that audience is. So if they're a little bit older, that hurdle maybe is a little bit lower. But if they're quite a little bit younger and they're very inexperienced or complete beginners, it is more difficult. So if you're watching this and you're thinking about joining GGJ Next and you're thinking, well, what kind of things should I do? My message, and I guess the message from our panel would be, don't be afraid to think about focusing on board games or things and activities that you know will suit the audience that you're speaking to. You're not obligated to make everything overtly technological. You don't have to shoot for the moon on your first attempt, and things will kind of fall into place better when you think like that. I think that's an important message to get across. While we're at it, it might be a good idea just to mention this year's themes. So we had great fun working with some of those themes last week, like I've said. And this year's themes are all very interesting. They come from the Games for Change Challenge themes. And I'm a big fan of the Games for Change themes because every year they're always very well thought out, and they brilliantly address real world problems and ideas and concepts that really help sort of bridge that gap for young people and their understanding of things that are going on in the world and how to solve these kinds of problems so that there's an awareness. So the first theme for this year, I think, is Outgrow Hunger, which is essentially asking people to think about games that involve growing food and feeding communities in one form or another, which I think is very open-ended, and it sells itself brilliantly well. We had quite a few games at some of the jams around last week that addressed that. The second theme is called Own the Road, which is focusing very much on the use of games to raise awareness on vehicle and road safety. Again, last week I had a whole bunch of games about people not getting squished on the road and crossing the road and all the rules and the thinking of the interesting ideas for young people. It was very creative and it was a lot of fun. And the last one is All In for Nature, which with a focus on reefs and rainforests. So again, we're thinking about raising awareness of endangered species and ecology and all the kinds of things you may see in those different kinds of environments. So you have 3 themes for this year that are very, very open-ended and a lot of fun to be had, but all of them with equally important messages about various different types of topics. So yeah, they're great themes this year. Okay, so you've thought about running a site. We've got these amazing themes and we've spoken a bit about some stuff that's happened prior. What would be some of the key things that you would recommend for folks who are thinking about signing up as a site organizer for GGJ Next? What would be some of the biggest sort of, I'm not going to use the word challenges, but things that you need to think about when you're thinking about becoming a site organizer? Mina, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I would like organizer. I also had a lot of challenges in past years. Like when you are booking a venue, like when you have, like if you don't have enough money, so you cannot pay for the site. So we need some money before organizing the event. And like even sometimes there are competitors. Now from last year, we had a lot of competitors like in public library and like government officers. They don't like it is an international event and they have like racial issues, so they don't like to talk in English also. So that was a big challenge. And even like after doing this global game jam event, like we got many students, like more students for this. They didn't go to their class. Even the students, they have asked the chief librarian about us, like we want to join this class, but they have not informed because they don't like we are going up little bit more than that. So that was a big challenge, and they didn't give for the third month. They didn't give the venue. Even we are going to pay them. So they said like they don't like that was a big issue. So I have to like book another place, like 2-3 places.
Right. So
And
you had issues procuring your venue, and so even late on, you were still trying to nail the particular venue. So that must impact quite a lot on your plans, then, right? It makes it more challenging for you to plan what you're doing.
Yes, like suddenly it happened, and I didn't know that. So they were following us how they are doing. Like the chief librarian, she was following me, and she wanted to know how they are going to do, because they have influence, like government influence. So somehow I did it. So I booked another place, and I asked all the students to come there and do the project like that.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm glad you managed to sort it out, because it'd be a shame if you didn't. And by the way, I think it's important to note, Mina just mentioned about having to spend money on venues. One of the things that we offer at Global Game Jam in partnership with Games for Change is we offer stipends. So if you're thinking about running a Global Game Jam Next site, and money for a venue is a particular issue for you, then we do have small stipends that you can apply for. The way that it works effectively is that we'll work with each site on a case-by-case basis, and the amount of money that you're able to apply for is basically dependent on the proposed size of the site in terms of the number of expected students and things like that. So, and that would form part of the application process, but it's actually a really important point. So one of the things you need then is a venue. You need access to a venue, an appropriate space that you can invite people to, that you know is guaranteed to be of use and available to you at the time of the jam. And if we're able to support you with advice and things on the ground, we will try our very best to do so. And if that includes some financial support via a stipend, then again, that's something that we can certainly look at. So you need this venue, and you also need to make sure that you have resources available to deploy the kind of jam that you want. So of course, if you're thinking about digital games, then you either need a laboratory with PCs, or you need to be able to bring laptops and have the space to set those kinds of things up in there. And obviously that's really important. Kunan, what would you say? What would you add to that in terms of things to think about?
It's actually, I'm sure everyone here has experience on this, like, because it's not like traditional jam, which only within 48 hours. So a student get excited on the first week, second week, they still get excited, third week still get excited, but like onwards till the end, they gradually lose the excitement. And so it's really a problem for us last time. We have a great start and students are following along really well, but then during the middle of the week, they just stop. They start questioning, why am I doing here? I have school exam need to take. And I know it's fun. I know it can get us a stage and even a chance to win the award, but they're just too busy on the school work. So that was the biggest problem I had last time. And this year, gladly, we partnered up with a local international school. So it kind of become part of their coursework they need to do. So yeah,
that's very, very good actually. And if you're a site organizer and you're based at a school, that can give you a really strong foundation, because if quite often, and with a lot of site organizers for GGJ Next that I speak to, and by the way, site organizers for traditional game jam sites around the world as well, very often you have folks that are based in places of education, and what they try to do is they'll build the jam in some form or another as part of their curriculum development using particular types of skills. And if you can make that happen, that can certainly tick a lot of boxes with respect to how easily you can make things happen on the ground with respect to working with all your stakeholders and other responsible parties and organizations. And it also kind of makes more sense for the kids involved, because if they're getting graded on it, then obviously that increases people's motivations. But it doesn't have to be like that, right? Because there are many sites around the world that are led by folks that focus on after school clubs and various different types of sort of external activity venues. And those sites run brilliantly well also. And so really it's about thinking in terms of who your audience is and how do you access that audience in the best way. So you'll have folks that might be based in a school or a college or some kind of educational establishment, or you have some folks that are not based there, or maybe they're linked with one. And if you can link up with one, that's always a great starting place, is to reach out to your local schools, colleges, and ask them if they're interested in collaborating on one of these events. And Kunan, it's a great example. Nicky, you made it back.
I made it.
Yay!
I was here in the background. I just don't know what was going on my side.
Technical issues. It's okay.
Yeah.
So we were just talking a bit about, if you're listening, we're just talking a bit about logistics and some of the things, your advice in terms of what would be some key things to think about if you're wanting to apply to be a site organizer for GGJ. What would you say?
Yeah, the first thing I would say is make sure that you've got some sort of funds. That's the main important thing, and make sure you've got a venue that you know how much capacity. Am I back? I hope so.
We can hear you.
Followed up with some schools. I found out how many students we could have in their computer labs. I collaborated with the school. They're really happy to put this on their partnership thing, and that sort of dictated how big of an event I could hold. Once I had that in mind, it was much easier to then say, okay, we're going to have this amount of kids. You're going to have to apply this way, and we've got different ones because of our school calendar. We generally do the character design for G4C. That's usually the entry, we call it, into ours. We take like the top out of those, and then those who get accepted get to go onto our game jam at the labs and stuff like that. So I would say that's the main thing we have to look at first on my side, is making sure, number one, there's access, somebody's going to give us that, and number two, funding, to make sure that we can at least feed people on the day or accommodate all the students coming from wherever they're coming from.
Yeah, I think having a good grasp of what you feel your capacity is important. And by the way, the great thing about GGJ Next is we have this quite long liberal window of opportunity. So unlike the traditional jam that Global Game Jam we're best known for, of course, we have the big jam that always runs the tail end of January into February, year from year. GGJ Next allows you to run any time from the opening, which is sort of middle of November, we've just passed that, through until the 15th of March. So you have this really long window of opportunity to run jams. And you don't just have to run one jam, you can run multiple jams, right? Again, and that's what some sites do. Some sites run small jams because maybe they don't have a huge capacity, but they actually run multiple jams throughout that period, and that's perfectly viable, and you can do that. The important thing is that when you apply, that we have that conversation so that we can get a good understanding of where you're at, what your plans are, and how those sorts of things work. It's also worth considering, and we mentioned this a little bit in the previous webinar again, so if you're interested in more specifics regarding the core application process, check out the last live webinar that we did, because we covered a lot of ground there. But it's worth mentioning that because GGJ Next is very much focused on young developers aged 10 to 18, there is more provision for safeguarding and provision of safeguarding in that sense. So where we are interested in, just as much as your venue and your physical resources, we're also interested in your staffing resources and safeguarding for any minors, for all the folks that are participating. And so there are some additional issues to contend with in terms of how we view your site. And then don't forget, you need to head to the globalgamejam.org and look for the host a GGJ Next site button, and click that button, and there's a form you can complete and give us all of your details, and then we'll speak to you. And you can also jump straight into the site registration if you'd like to do that. You can click on host a site, choose that button, and then make sure you select GGJ Next as your site audience intention, and that will begin a site application for a Global Game Jam Next site. And again, go through some of the things that we spoke about the previous week. Okay, so what would you say has been the overall impact of running GGJ Next sites in your region? Because I think we've been hearing a lot about sort of bridging that gap with respect to education, maybe filling the niche gaps in the curriculum. What would you say has been the impact of sites in your region? Mina, do you want to start?
Yes, I would say like in Sri Lanka, parents got understanding about what is game development, and it helps their kids to get a job in future. So they really like it, and we got more students in 2025 January. We got and now they have a good understanding like about coding, programming, and they got the opportunity to show their talents in creative, like their creativity, and they also got the opportunity to solve United Nations goals like global issues using games, creativity, and innovation. So in future, I think there will be more students for our program.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And the fact that the Games for Change challenge goals are derived from some of the core UN global challenge goals is really important in that insight. I also really like that GGJ Next in your ecosystem is very much also speaking to the parents and raising awareness for parents in terms of the benefits of jams and that educational development, because when you're working with younger people, having buy-in from the parents is also really important. And that's something you might want to think about if you're an aspiring site organizer, in terms of having materials available. So if parents ask you, so what's this about, and why should I send my child to this event, that you have something that you can show to parents that kind of help to explain that. And I think that's like really important. Kunan.
Yeah, I was checking on the question they have on the chat, stipends thing. What was the question about? It's a community impact.
Yeah. What do you think have been the benefits of your of running GGJ Next sites in your neck of the woods?
All right. So I think it's providing an international stage to the kids, especially when they really focusing on their drawing or their learning already, and then they lack of confidence, and that's what happened to most of the Chinese or Asian kids. Like, they work really hard, but they never explain, they never tell people what they do. And I think GGJ Next, with this competition, and I wouldn't say the bar is low, but like having to separate the sector by age group, that really give the kids confidence about, okay, I can possibly be choose. Like, I have a kid from last year, she's from Hong Kong, super talent, get IELTS score at 8 on age of 16, which I never be able. So and she always felt, okay, she's because she didn't perform well on academic in the school, so she always feel like she's the person left behind. She never be able to succeed in anything. But then we had a board game project together for GGJ Next, and then one day she buzzed me in the night, say, "Teacher Kun, I get in the final list. How is that possible?" And I say, you see, I mean, it's if you submit, you have chance. You just need to submit it, even though you feel it's not ready yet, even though you feel because it's never done. I mean, even in the industry, by the time the release date come, you still feel, okay, I'm not ready. I still need to fix something. But hey, press the button, submit it.
Yeah. That's such great advice. That is the I think the age-long curse of the creative person, that we always want. It has to be perfect before we show it to anybody. And the mantra of a good game jam is, it doesn't matter what you made, submit it at the end, because you never know where it might lead you. And it's worth mentioning that it's vital as a site organizer for GGJ Next sites, that you make sure that you submit all of the games that get made. It doesn't matter whether they're huge and the most amazing game that's ever been made, or they're small simple, basic projects and prototypes, it doesn't matter. What's important is that you submit and you tell your story and show the journeys of all the folks that are involved. And you never know, you may end up making it all the way to the final, and that's something really important. So yeah, submission of your games is super important. Yeah, so one of the things you need to make sure you do as a site organizer, you also need to make sure that you register on the Games for Change site as well, that you register your site. And I noticed that somebody asked in the comments about what are the criteria for a stipend, because I mentioned that very briefly. And basically, there is a form that you need to submit as part of the application process. That if you navigate to the globalgamejam.org website, you'll see a little tab that says sign up for a GGJ Next site. If you click that, that will take you to a short data collection form. And on that form, you can express your intention to apply for a GGJ Next site, but also that same form will ask you if you're interested in applying for the stipend. And part of the question that was asked by one of the viewers was what are the rules and stipulations around obtaining the site. So the basic core tenet is about the size of the site. So for the minimum possible threshold, you need to be aiming for 10 to 20 people in terms of attendees of your site. Now, that may be that you achieve that overall attendance by multi-jamming. So you might only have a little room that can only fit 5 or 6 people. But that doesn't mean that you can't apply for a stipend. It just means that we would probably need you to run multiple events just to get yourself to the kind of size that we need, and that's still perfectly okay. And we would work if that happened to be your exact situation, then of course we'd work with you as part of the application process to clarify what the route to success would look like with respect to that. And then from there, it will be based on the general size, because clearly larger sites require more help resource than smaller sites. And there are obviously some big differences depending on where you're at in the world in terms of the value and the cost of resources and things like that. So it is all done in that sort of fair and balanced way. That is the idea. So I'm just looking at the time, and I thought we've got some interesting questions that were submitted to us, and some folks have been asking questions as we've been going as well. So one of the questions that we had was, do you need prior experience in running a game jam to be a site organizer? The quick question to that, I would say, is no. Obviously, it's super helpful if you've ever attended any kind of game jam prior, right? Because some folks might have done Global Game Jam before, or maybe they've been a jammer at some other type of jam somewhere else, whether it was an online one or a face-to-face one or whatever it may be. It's helpful to have that experience because you have a little bit more insight in terms of the processes that are involved, the general conduct and flow of how jammers engage with those kinds of events. If you've been part of one, you kind of get it that little bit more. So it helps. But actually, if you're not, if you've never done that before and you're completely new, then we have an entire procedure to support you with that. So, for example, whether you're applying for the main big game jam or you're applying to be a GGJ Next site organizer and you've never done it before, training for that is part of the application process. So when we review your application and then we meet up to discuss what's going on, there'll be an element of training involved with respect to all the things you need to think about in order to run and host the jam site. And then, of course, we would ask questions like, okay, what are your thoughts on your venue and where that may well be? And if you cast your minds back again to the previous week's webinar that we ran, we spoke a lot about the form and we showed you the kinds of key information that you need to provide to us in order for us to process that application. And it's helpful if you're at a stage where you're able to answer, let's say, the majority of those questions, and then anything that's missing, we'll pick that up as part of the application process with you. That's why the application process is not a 2-minute thing. It is a process that has a couple of different stages to it, and it's important to realize that. But it's there to make sure that you're able to host the best possible site for you and your region and your location, and that is really why it's there, to help you to be awesome. And it's super
and I just want to add to that, maybe just to not having done a jam before shouldn't really stop you, and we're all around. You can always just ask for any help that you would want. And there are so many people who host jams now that you would most likely find somebody else also to help you out, run it along with you possibly. So I wouldn't find that an issue. Just push away and
Oh
get it
yeah,
done.
100%. By the way, if you're not already a member of it, it's really worth joining the Global Game Jam community Discord, the central one, because one thing I can tell you is that the Global Game Jam community is one of the greatest communities in the world. Everybody is super nice, super helpful. You know, if you're unsure or you have a question, you can jump in there and ask, and people will jump in and help you out and answer your questions for you. And if it's something super specific, then one of our team will jump in and help you. And it is very, very open and very accessible. So I would highly recommend, if you haven't done so, jump in, because you can get a feel for all the different types of activity. And this time of year is the best time of year to jump in, because we're building up to all these huge, amazing events. Global Game Jam Next now being live, for example, the main traditional Global Game Jam on the horizon as well, and a host of other additional activities we've got planned. So it's worth jumping in, because you get a feel for all of those different things. So the quick answer then, after all of that, is no experience is necessary. You know, we can help you. You can host a site. We can help you to do that, which is great.
And can I just add, scope small. If it's your first time holding a jam, just the way you tell the students to scope small on their games, scope small on your jam. It's better to start small, make your mistakes. It's way more manageable than having too many kids and then you've lost complete control.
Yes, and for folks that have never jammed before, not all, but it's quite often people get a little bit too overexcited and they just go off at a tangent, and they scope and small is a really key thing. And for sites that allow folks to sleep over, one of the biggest beginner mistakes is not taking adequate rest. Stop, think about what you're doing, get something to eat, have a rest, then come back and look at it with a fresh pair of eyes. And it's one of the worst things you can do is just power for 24 hours, not take any rest, and then it's very, very difficult to make it to the finishing line then, because you become too tired and so forth. So taking breaks, scope it correctly, they're all things to think about in terms of how you proceed. Another question that we had was, how would you encourage first-time participants to try and join the Game Jam? That's actually a really good question. I'll throw that to you guys. How do you guys encourage folks to join your jam sites? Mina, what do you do? How do you do it?
I would like to say, they can go to our website, Global Game Jam site, and they can see about that. There is I have already written an article about how to host a jam, so they can go to that page and get an idea how to do an in-person session or a in-person site, and also online. So if they don't have any knowledge in game development, but if they want to organize a game jam, first they can think about they can ask teachers, volunteers who knows about game development to participate. And also they should give importance to safety, because we are working with children. And they can plan if they want to do workshop. If we are running the jam for 4 months, so they can plan. One day they can do game design workshop, another day game development, programming and coding. And first they have to get children age group 10 to 18 years, then they can start their site, I think.
Yeah, and depending on where you're at, you can jump onto the itch submission site for GGJ Next, and you'll be able to see examples of previous games that have been made. And the same thing goes for the traditional game jam site. And of course, you can browse at that level all previous games from different venues in your area. Kunan, do you want to just talk quickly, and then we'll jump through a couple of extra questions? Yeah,
sounds good. I would say, because it's about site organizer, if it could provide some resource for the participant. It can be quick section to help them sorting out, decide the direction of the design, and it can be walk through what tool on the website, on the YouTube, or they could use for develop their game, something like that. I mean, because they often feel insecure about what am I gonna do next. So I think provide a tiny mentorship session will help.
Yeah. No, I think it makes perfect sense. It's really important. The more information you can provide, and I think I've said this many times on some previous webinars, the more information you can provide to your jammers, the easier it is for the jammers to have a great time, but it's also easier for you in terms of your planning, because you have to think it all through. I just want to jump through some extra questions in the last couple of minutes that we have. One question was about when does it all end? So for GGJ Next, we want you to try to be done by the March 15th is the cutoff point for jamming with respect to GGJ Next and G4C site submissions. So, or game submissions, I should say. So, 15th of March is the cutoff for that for 2026. Another question quickly was, can I join jams in my own country? So the quick answer to that is yes. I mean, the first place to start, if you're interested in joining a jam, but not necessarily hosting a jam site, which is a slightly different thing, yes, what you can do is if you go to the globalgamejam.org website, you can search by location and you'll be able to see all the sites in your area. Now, we're still relatively early in this process of registering sites. So when you do go to the site, and if you do a search and it doesn't look like there's anything in your area, my initial advice would be to give it a little bit of time, because you will start to see more and more sites popping up. But as we edge closer to the new year, if you're still worried or not quite sure what's happening, you can reach out to us as a central GGJ team, and we'll be able to advise you about where you can jam, what the nearest sites to you may be. It's also worth mentioning that quite often, especially virtual GGJ sites, and that can also apply to GGJ Next sites as well. Sites that run virtually will typically have a community space that offer spaces for folks to jam that are not even in the same time zone. So it is entirely possible you could join a jam site that's running in another country, assuming that the languages and everything is compatible with everybody, because some sites, of course, run in specific languages. Some sites run in English, and some sites support multiple languages and so forth. So all of those things, if it all comes together for you and the site allows it, you can always think about joining a jam site, even in another country, and working with a whole new group of people with different cultural background to yourself, which would be awesome, right? So that's great. Another question, and I think it's the last question we'll deal with before we break up, because I'm just conscious of the time, is submitted by Hector, and he was asking, what are some of the biggest challenges you find in addressing theme topics and applying them in game creation? My quick answer to that would be, the key thing is to make sure that you have a proper brainstorming session as part of your event. And no matter how big the event or how small the event, having some kind of structured brainstorming is super important. And I can attest to that just from the event I mentioned last week, where I was working with all these kids. There's hundreds of children at any one time. It's important, particularly if the audience is younger, that you give them a bit of a framework to kind of get started. So you give them examples, talk about things, give them things to do that might inspire some creative activities and things like that. And so you need to be a little bit more prescriptive and lead things a little bit more, and then you'll see the creativity take place. So having some kind of structured brainstorming session, I think, helps allay that. I don't know if anyone else has some specific examples you might want to add to that.
No, that sounds good.
Yeah, I think since they are young, I think having some sort of a framework or a structure, I think spot on with that. And having that session, that like a brainstorm, would also be super helpful. Said all the things.
I'll give just one quick example. I mean, there was one group of children that was super keen on Fortnite. Okay, for the big Fortnite game that everyone knows. Other games are available, and so they absolutely wanted to make a board game that was linked with Fortnite in one form or another. And the challenge then was to, okay, how can I get these guys to incorporate one of the themes but also incorporate their desire to do Fortnite. So we ended up looking at something that would have like Fortnite characters, like trying to cross a road or doing that, and thinking like that. And then eventually they kind of formed an idea that was able to kind of bridge that gap between the theme and this thing that they really wanted to also kind of work on, and they were happy with that. And so that's just one example of some challenges that sometimes you face.
And themes are also not in the sense that it's like quite free for you to kind of interpret them as broadly as you want as well. And from a design point of view, if you think of them as constraints, and then deal with them as constraints. Deal with them as constraints, and I think it might even work that way, as that, oh, these are the boundaries, or even just jumping off points for you to kind of, whether it is mechanically or thematically, how do you want to use those themes. Some can be in a very narrative space, or it could be very specifically, like for instance, Outgrow Hunger could be about actually running a food shop where you have to manage something, or it could be just about it could have a narrative layer also. So it really depends on how do you want to look through, and what kind of lenses you want to use, and how do you want the theme to be a constraint in your game.
Yeah, I agree. A good theme should always promote lots and lots of creativity. And I have to say that this year's themes for GGJ Next are very, very good, link really well to all the UN goals that they are dealing with. And having worked with them already this year, I had no issues at all with finding inspiration in people's ideas and stuff. Not a single person I work with had any issues. It's been super positive and creative, so that's amazing. One last question, because Hector is on an absolute mission today. He's given us lots of questions. He was just asking about where you might publish the games and stuff, and outside of the GGJ globalgamejam.org site. Games will be published on itch. There's a specific repository on itch that links to GGJ Next games, which is where you will need to submit your games to, which is a little bit different from traditional jam sites, which all go through the core GGJ.org site. GGJ Next sites go through our itch platform, and that again is for safeguarding reasons largely, and a bunch of other logistical things. But yeah, that's where you publish games. Okay, well, we have basically run out of time. We always overrun every week. I told you guys, we always overrun because I can't shut up. That's my problem. Okay. I'm just being honest. Say it like it is, right? That's all it is.
Yeah.
So you guys have been amazing. I hope that guys watching, you've been able to learn something. If you have more questions, please feel free to follow up. Drop them in the comments and we will reply. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And make sure you follow up on subsequent webinars, because we'll be covering a whole range of topics from week to week in the build up to all these different wonderful events. And thank you for joining, and we'll see you in the next one.
See you in the next one.
Thank you. See you.